under the GM report.
Okay, cool.
There's Bob.
Hello, Director Glover.
Hello.
Hi, Bobby.
Can you hear me?
Yep, we got
Yes.
Awesome. Great.
Did you go jump in the lake like I told you to?
I did. I did.
Good.
What's the temp up there?
Ooh, it is balmy 99 right now. I think
Oh my
might be 100. Yeah, it says 100 outside. It says 99 on my watch.
Did you hurt your eye, Bobby?
Well, yeah, I have a blocked artery in my retina, which requires me to get shots in my eye every 4 to 5 weeks. And my last round of shots got my eye got a little bruised. There was some bleeding, swelling, all of the above, and so doesn't hurt. I keep telling my kids that.
Ouch.
Looks pretty gnarly.
I'm sorry about that.
Thank you.
Did you have Bobby, did you get a grand total of what was donated at the lemonade stand yesterday?
Yeah, so they're still tallying it up, but we about $3,200 at this point.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah.
What was this event?
His daughters,
Lemonade
yeah,
stand?
his daughters hosted a lemonade stand as a fundraiser for a young friend of theirs who's battling cancer. So
Yeah.
his daughters, his niece and nephew, other friends, so
Where was the stand, Bobby?
at Bobby's house.
It was out in front of our house, and we just planned on, like doing a regular. I figured we'd make the girls wanted to do it. I figured they'd make a couple $100, and then all of a sudden we got word that the Pleasant Hill Police Department was coming out, and so they rolled out with 10 officers, and they posted it on their social media, and then we got a call from Pleasant Hill Police that said after they posted it, NBC Bay Area had reached out to them, and so NBC Bay Area, so we were on the 11 o'clock news last night. Ronnie was, and then the Contra Costa Fire Department came, and Contra Costa probation officers, and people I came out of nowhere, but yeah, it was really cool. But yeah, Michelle was one of their first
Remember
customers.
that forever. They will remember that forever. Yeah. Awesome.
One day down. Hi.
Hello.
How are you? Good.
Fine, how you doing, Ella?
Speaking to see you. Yeah. What on? For warn everyone, I'm gonna hit record starting so I do not forget.
Okay. Figure out how to go backwards.
Hey, what's up?
Hey everyone.
Hi, Osa.
The full house online.
Thank you.
It's like the good old days.
It is.
In about 2 minutes.
How are you guys? Good. How are you? Good.
Let's see.
How you doing?
Good.
The public comment card if you want to speak.
Okay, well, we'll start. All right. Call to order the regular meeting of the Pleasant Hill Rec and Park District Board of Directors meeting. And we have 3 of the directors are at this location at our district administrative offices on Gregory Lane. And we have 2 directors remote, one in Lakehead, California, and the other in Copperopolis. And do either of you have anyone with you, Derek and Bob?
I do not.
No, I do not.
Thank you very much. All right, we'll move on to item 2, our Pledge of Allegiance, and Vice Chair Tran, would you please lead us?
Yes. I pledge
allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America,
America, and to the republic for which it stands,
one nation, under God,
under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Don't let us sweat.
Second.
Item 3 on our agenda is public comment, and this particular item for public comment allows the public to comment upon any subject that is not on the agenda. Is anybody here? Let's see, we have one
have Alan.
public comment.
You want to speak on the item that's on the agenda? On the
Is
bond,
the pickleball thing on the agenda?
the bond measure, which includes pickleball, is on the agenda.
Okay, then I'll wait.
6.1.
All right.
The first
So we-
action item, Steve.
Thank you. We do have one public comment from Alan Bode. Bade. You can go ahead and sit in that chair right there. And go ahead.
I always get a little nervous public speaking, so.
Alan, you have 5 minutes. I'm gonna start the timer.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so I wanted to bring to the board's attention some interesting grant opportunities that we just learned about. I am a board member of the Walnut Creek Watershed Council and a co-founder of Friends of Pleasantville Creeks. The Walnut Creek Watershed Council is an umbrella group for a number of creek stewardship groups in our area. And we recently learned about some significant grant opportunities for habitat enhancement. One is up to $500,000 with the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation with no matching funds. Grants are between $10,000 and up to $500,000. And another one is $5 million with the California Department of Fish and Wildlife's Office of Spill Prevention and Response. And this is known as a CDFW Environmental Enhancement Fund opportunity. We believe this also has no matching requirements. The requested minimum amount, but they'll entertain lower ones, is $500,000, and there's $5 million available. These are for the National Fish and Wildlife Fund is available Bay Area only. So it has much fewer people that will be applying for it. These are not very well publicized. The RFPs just came out and deadlines for them are in September. One is September 27th, the other one is September 11th. We felt like this could present a significant opportunity to enhance some of Rec and Park's parks. For instance, Shannon Hills, which meets all the requirements. It has a creek running through it. It could be very complementary to your goals in your master plan. For instance, you could take all the ivy out of Shannon Hills, replace them with riparian appropriate habitat enhancing native plants. We actually met with an environmental contractor. We joined other locations and requested that we look at some Pleasant Hill sites today. An environmental contractor named Helix, which is statewide. We do work with them with Arunda removal. We recently received, WCWC received $115,000 grant to remove Arunda along San Ramon Creek, which will be starting in August. So these are not insignificant funds. Helix really liked Shannon Hills Park and felt like you could, remove all the ivy in the western section, take all of the non-natives, from the playground area to the east, and significantly enhance those. They would be willing to write the grant proposal, do all of the plans for your approval, and by the deadline. And the grant money could be with the Walnut Creek Watershed Council, with the Contra Costa Resource Conservation District, or some other venue, depending on whether or not this board and staff is interested in this kind of proposal. I did print the RFPs for the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation and the Cal OSPR RFPs. And the FAQs for OSPR. OSPR basically is oil spill and prevention fund. Fines are collected, put in a pot. They all of a sudden become available, and it's not insignificant money. I wanted to bring this to your attention and see if the Lands and Facilities Committee might be interested in looking at this opportunity. Claire from Helix, who we met with today, would be willing to come back and meet with board members from Rec and Park. Let's see. Yeah, this year we have a grant that we were awarded for Arunda removal along San Ramon Creek. Mike Vickers from Walnut Creek, City Walnut Creek, and Bob Simmons, former mayor of Walnut Creek, are working on a proposal for the Civic Park area, which we could combine and get up to into the 500,000 range for the Cal OSPR grant, which has a higher minimum. So if you would like the Lands and Facilities Committee or anybody else to talk to us, we'd love to talk to you about it and hope that you'd be interested in this kind of an opportunity. I know you can't discuss it on board because it wasn't on the agenda. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. If she wants to make that public comment too, perhaps, you'd have to fill out a card.
Michelle, do those have deadlines?
There's a proposed deadline of September 27th on this one. I need to review and see if we're eligible and what all of the information. So I'll just review those and then I'll get in touch with Alan. So
Do you have my contact info?
So I guess the thing that Alan left out that I thought was important to say is that really all we need from Rec and Park District is, if you're interested, just permission to do it in collaboration with you. Helix would write the grants, they would perform all the labor, clean up all the dead stuff and remove ivy or whatever. In collaboration with you, they would bring a proposal to Rec and Park. It would all be grant money, so it wouldn't cost the district anything. So we thought this was a marvelous opportunity to do some restoration work and enhance wildlife habitat, which is what the grant is supposed to do. So we thought we'd come and bring this to you, and I think there'll be other opportunities coming forward that maybe other parks would, once we do something like this, you might be interested in too. That might not cost you anything. Free is always good, so we thought we'd just present it. I guess that's all I have to say.
Wendy, thank you very much.
You're
Both,
welcome.
both you and Alan, thank you very much for bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
So just contact us and let us know, we go ahead.
Do we have any other public comment on something not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none, I will close public comment and move on to item 4.1, our report from our general manager.
Yes, so I included a written report with some information. Just a reminder, the nominating period for upcoming election is open. We do have our 2 incumbents who have pulled papers, so I appreciate that. But though that closes on August 9th, so just a reminder. Also, we had a very successful Blues and Brews. I want to thank everyone who was able to come. It was hot on Friday, so attendance was a little lighter on Friday than I think it has in years past. Saturday, we exceeded basically kind of the number of tickets we've sold in a long time in the beer tent, so that was great. And the park was full, especially as things started to cool down, so it was really nice. And so I want to thank all the volunteers, all of our staff and sponsors who helped make this event possible. So and I know a number of you were able to come. Unfortunately, some of you were not, but it really was a great event and ran really smoothly. Staff did a great job. It was a lot of fun. So that was exciting. And then next week, I'm going to be working off-site. Next week, I'll be in and out. I have my annual anti-camp next week with the kids. But I'll be checking emails and working in evenings. I got a number of meetings that I'm fitting in around water park visits. So we have a number of those. So I will be working
Take
next
notes.
week. I will be working next week. With that, I'll take any questions.
Okay, are there any questions from the board of General Manager Lacy? Okay. Anything from Derek or Bob?
Not for me, thank you.
All right, thanks very much. We will then move on to item 5, our consent calendar. We just have one item. And I'll entertain a motion for the consent calendar. Thank you both.
I will move the consent calendar.
Moved by Director Bonato and seconded by Vice Chair Tran. And we will have a roll call vote.
Yes. Director Bonato,
Yes.
Director Glover,
Yes.
Secretary Wurst,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tran,
Yes.
and Chair Bonato.
Chair who?
I'm sorry, Chair Vincent.
That understand? Yes.
Sorry, Chair Vincent. Sorry, I went back in time. Sorry about that. Okay, passes 5-0. Thank you.
All right. Okay, thank you very much. We will now move on to item 6, our action items. 6.1 is adopting Resolution 2024-07-25, ordering an election to authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds, establishing specifications of the election order, and requesting consolidation with other elections occurring on November 5th, 2024.
Great. Thank you, Chair Vincent, members of the board. I prepared a brief staff report. I also have our consultant Larry Tramatola online visiting or with us today to answer any questions as we move forward. But tonight is the culmination of, we started this work last year when at our retreat, when we said we wanted to kind of move forward and look at the options for potentially putting a future bond measure together. We had looked at at least one other election time, but November 2024 was what the board's latest direction to staff and consultants were to come back with a resolution to consider for putting on a general obligation bond on the ballot. So We have settled on a tax rate of $19 per 100,000 in assessed value. So that keeps it, that keeps the average homeowner assessed value of ours is right around $500,000 for the average home, keeps it at under $100 a year. So we thought with the price sensitivity in our public opinion poll that $19 was a good place to land. So that would, based on the current estimate would be 77 million. For those of you who were around when we did measure A, you know, our assessed value has gone up. So we were a little higher then, and our total was actually a little less as far as what the bond amount was going to be. So that is good in that our assessed value has gone up. So we can charge people a little less and get a little bit more. In the resolution, we have all of the directions to the county for putting it on the ballot. It also includes the list of, so there's a couple of things that are included. One being the ballot statement. So the ballot statement is the statement that goes in the ballot. It can't be more than 75 words. So it is exactly at that threshold. So that's Appendix A. Appendix B is the full text of the bond measure. So that includes all of the information, including the list of projects and eligible things that we can spend the money on. I also wanted to, there's a lot of accountability safeguards. A lot of that is to comply with ACA 1. So ACA 1 is going to be on the same ballot as our measure, and that would reduce the general obligation bond voter threshold to 55% instead of the 2/3 if it passes. And so our resolution is set up that if that passes, then we get the benefit of the 55% threshold as well. So it's not, can't be retroactive to previous, but it can be, it'll be for the November ballot going forward. So council has made sure that that all of our provisions that are required in ACA 1 are also in our resolution. So I wanted to point that out. And the bond project list is vague, except for a couple of projects, mostly because we have a lot of things that need to be done, renovations, things in all of our parks that need to be done. And so this provides us the most flexibility in being able to spend the money as we move forward. So one of the, just for Mr. Miller, it includes pickleball in that list, including pickleball, as well as upgrading playground equipment, fields and facilities, and lots of other options. And then the last thing is the tax rate statement. The tax rate statement is basically the entire information for voters to be able to look at. We are including the tax rate statement in the ballot, or in the ballot materials, so people can understand what that full implication of that is, since you can't explain that in 75 words. With that, so tonight, staff is recommending that the board adopt the resolution to place the measure on the ballot. That is due to the county no later than August 9th. So I'm hoping that that if the board chooses to move forward with this, that we get this done this evening so that staff has enough time to make sure that we can meet all the county deadlines really early in case there's any issues with the county that we may need to fix. So with that, Larry, did you have anything you wanted to add before I turn it over?
No, I thought you gave a very good summary of the steps that have been taken to do this. I want to say your staff, your board, your consultants, your legal and financial have been just terrific in this process. And so I think we have a smart plan. I think it's one that voters, when they take a look at it, will be supportive of. I think we've been cautious about the tax rate. We haven't wanted to overpromise and underdeliver. So I think the projects that are delineated are important. I think this will make a huge difference. And the one thing that Michelle, the only thing that I would say is that ACA 1 is, I believe, now going to be called Proposition 5. So that's the only correction that I would make. I think they've designated as Proposition 5, but you are correct. That is on the ballot. And if it passes, our measure, which now requires 2/3, would pass at 55%. But our goal, obviously, is to get more than the 2/3 voters to support this, which we think that it's done well enough that we should be able to do this. So a lot of steps, there's a lot of steps between now and election day. So we have a lot of work to do with the community. But I want to acknowledge the board of providing direction, support, help, because I think it's been a really good process, and you've allowed a significant amount of community input to guide your actions, which has been really, really helpful.
Before we go into public comment, I want to see if any of the board members, either here or online, have questions of Michelle first.
You have a couple?
Questions? Okay,
So before we get into discussion.
right, discussion, we'll do that.
I know we have a very strict limit of words, in our,
Bond statement, yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I keep reading it over and over again, and there's like one word missing. Are we right up at the nubbins of our word count?
We are,
Okay,
and so that is why that word has gotten stricken. So,
what word is that? Or anyway,
uh,
there's an and missing, and when I read it, I just struggle to understand what this is about. And I wonder if people going to the voting booth who are reading it then will have the same impression. In the third line, before the word access, the word and just strikes me as being necessary in there to make sense of what comes before.
Larry? You're on mute.
I can,
Oh, you-
we're right at 75 words.
Okay.
And you are correct. And I will also tell you that these never read in proper English. We're limited to 75 words, and about 40 of those words are legally required with respect to the financial information in the bottom 4 lines. So we're really, really restricted with describing projects. So we can't add the word and, but then we'll have to
Find another
cut
word to
some
take out.
details out, yeah.
Well, to the extent that anyone thinks that those going into the voting booth are going to read this and say, this doesn't read like, like straight English. That was my impression. Like I said, I keep reading it over and over again. So that's just a question to you, Michelle, are we right at the word limit? I don't know that there's anything that you would care to do about it, but if there is, then that would be a recommendation. Secondly, are we limited in the order in which we talk about the dollars in this statement? Because when I read it, I trip over the 77 million before I get to the $19 per 100,000. Is there a way to reverse the order of discussion of that in this statement so that the $19 per 100,000 comes before the total?
Katie?
Or is
Yeah, there's
that
no
written
legal-
in stone also?
No, there's no legal restriction. I will say, I'll defer to Larry on this, but I know that this question has been tested. And I assume that Larry's loath to change that at this point, given that our data is based on this specific question. And I completely understand what you're saying. And I've never seen the tax rate come before the actual authorized dollar amount.
Yeah, this is pretty standard language that every bond measure uses. And as others have said, we really don't have 75 words to work with. We have about 30 words to work with because the state is now requiring these others. And that's candidly different when we passed the other bond a number of years ago. So this has been tested. I think I I would be reluctant to change it for two reasons. Number one, it had been tested. And number two, when you start messing with what the state has agreed in previous times as acceptable language, you're always at a risk of somebody stepping up and say you're not following the state guidelines. And then even though you may win at a later date, you're all wrapped up in that, not being able to communicate the basic needs. So Sandy, I get it. This is, no one would write a 75-word run-on sentence like this and be able to pass freshman English. It's just what it is. And we just have to kind of agree with it. Now, obviously, our efforts over the next number of months are going to be trying to simplify this and say, okay, what you're voting for, what it's going to cost. But at the end of the day, people are going to look at measure, whatever this is, measure X, measure Y, whatever, for the Pleasant Hill Recreation and Park District, yes or no. We're not going to win or lose this by not having an and or by flipping these. It's just, there'll be other issues.
Thank you all.
Thank you for the question. Anybody else have any questions? Okay, if not, I will now open public comment on this item, and we have one public comment from Steve Miller. Good to see you again, Steve.
Are you guys putting the cart before the horse here? $77 million? What are the projects that you want to complete with the 77 million? Do you answer or?
This is your time to provide
Okay.
public comment,
Okay,
but
I
there
mean-
is a staff report with the projects listed, so.
I mean, I'm not gonna vote to have my property taxes raised if I don't know what you guys want. And my biggest thing is about pickleball courts. What's been done on research, where to put them, how many, has that even been done yet? I'm not used to not having answers when I speak.
when in public comment, it's your making a public comment, and it's not something that we typically can respond to. But if you have a chance to read the staff item, I think that will at least give you some information, and there will be a lot more information coming out once, if the board does approve this resolution.
It's like I'm spitting in the wind here, people. I will vote again, if I want pickleball courts, I want 14 of them, I want them in a good location, I'd like to have lights, but that's not necessary. And I can have 100 people down here at the next meeting complaining that they're not getting pickleball courts, okay? I mean, you're asking for money and I don't see where they're gonna be. I guess that's it. I'm not
Thank you very
impressed.
much. Okay, I don't see any other public comment. So I will close public comment on this item and bring it back to the board for discussion. I'm gonna start with Bobby and Derek, since you're online. Do you have any comments on the resolution?
I have no comments.
Director Glover?
Yeah, no, thank you. And I just want to, echo Larry's comments, thanking staff and my fellow board members. This has been a long process, going back, many years when we did our strategic, our park master plan came up, heard from the community on what they wanted. And even, in those short few years after that, those items changed. And over the last 12 to 16 months, the amount of outreach that's gone out to the community has been substantial. And I just want to applaud that effort. When we remember talking about this 18 months ago, I believe, and, we were strategizing, we know there's a need. We're not a community like a Brentwood or Dublin that's going to have, 20,000 new houses coming into our community that's going to allow us to pay for a lot of these things. We have to, figure out how to make it work ourselves. And I think in that time, we've lived within our means. We've, I think as many folks realize, we Measure E, we built a new community center, a new teen center, a new senior center, and new ball fields with $26 million bond at that time. You know, for those, I think the Walnut Creek Library was 45 million and the Lafayette Library was, you know, a little north of that, and all valuable things to the community. But what we've been able to do on a tight budget has been substantial. And I think this is the logical next step. You know, we've got some needs, as we've heard from community members. I mean, everybody, we could get hundreds of people, and we have, you know, on a multitude of requests. And I think our goal is going to be to try to make everybody happy. And, you know, I think we're headed in that direction to the greatest extent possible, of course. And, you know, trying to make sure we've got a diverse community, a diverse group of needs, and we've listened to those folks, and we've heard from folks tonight. So I'm excited about the next steps. I tell you, you know, these things are always challenging when you're going to go to people to ask them to spend more money. But I think those of us that have lived in this community a substantial amount of time, that have, you know, grown here and benefited from what this community has offered, I think this is the next step to provide that for the future generations. And what what our board has before us tonight, I think does just that. And I'm just thrilled with how we got to this spot, and I'm just happy to support the effort moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Glover. Director Bonato or Vice Chair Tran?
Sure, I'll start.
Go ahead.
Well, my comments have, I think, to do with vision. And the hope and dreams of those of us that have been elected to lead this district, to hire wonderful people to manage and operate our community, but also with the intelligence, I think, to look around and see that what we are in charge of here is aging in many ways, is not providing the services that our district could to our public. And this is, I think, an expression of the vision that we as a board believe that we are bringing collectively in terms of this proposal to our voters, to see if they will recognize that our district is 70+ years old. Many of our facilities are 70+ years old as well. That our families, our children, our seniors, all of the folks that are connected through the use of our facilities and our programs can be so much better served if we find the means to be able to do those things. And that's what I'm talking about in terms of vision. Staff's role is to have vision, but also to implement. Our role as board members is to envision what we can do better, what we can provide better, what we can do better for our public, those that have elected us. So I'm extremely supportive, as Bobby has pointed out, having been on this board for a long time, knowing so many members of our community that would love to see our district provide far more modernized and updated and better facilities and opportunities for our particular residents. So I join Bobby and I hope all of us in just believing that this is a wonderful, magical step forward for our district to be able to ask the members of the voters if they will support this force. And this is an effort that has been a long time coming. It's certainly been a dream of mine. And with that, my wholehearted support in bringing this to the voters.
Thank you. Vice Chair Tran.
Yeah, thank you. I think I have both questions and some comments as well too. The question I have is regarding the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee. And I just wanted to ask it, what was envisioned with that? And if the language in there is purposely kept sort of vague on what that committee is actually going to do.
So the Citizens Oversight Committee.
Yes, absolutely. Please. Thank you very much, Gabe.
Proposition 39, which allows school districts to issue bonds with a 55% voter approval, had additional taxpayer safeguards, and one was a citizens oversight committee. So after Proposition 39 was passed, then the legislature codified that and they wrote in the specific requirements of an oversight committee. And so for school districts, there need to be 7 members, and there are certain categories that they must fill, like a parent who's involved in the PTA and someone in a business organization in the community. So we're expecting that if ACA 1 passes, we're gonna receive similar legislation that's written in, and we'll know exactly what the oversight committee will be made up of. But what it's, the reason it's included is because it's a requirement under ACA 1 that you will establish an oversight committee. And what they do in school districts is they produce an annual report. Typically, they meet quarterly or so. They're only required to meet once a year. So the amount of meetings that we recommend depend on how active your construction is. But you meet, district staff presents to them what's going on, how much things cost, shows them ledgers, other things that they need to be able to feel like they can produce a report informing the community whether or not the bond money is being spent on the projects that were approved by voters.
I'm not against the committee. Actually, one of the first things I said before throwing my support behind this was that we need to ensure that there's some sort of community oversight regarding the funds spent. I just wanted to get clarification on when it says sort of to ensure that the bond proceeds are expended. It sounds like they're more almost like an audit in a sense, right? They sort of say, hey, this is what we spent it on. Is it on the list of stuff that we said? And as opposed to say, here's a bunch of community members, would they suggest would be have some sort of advisory role to the board saying, could you do like Mr. Miller was on the community board or the committee, would he say, we're part of the committee, you should be doing pickleball courts, as opposed to you build things consistent with the list that, so I always wanted to make sure that what kind of clarification, or maybe some mixture or?
No, at least for Proposition 39, they're only a post-expenditure review
So
board.
for more of an audit,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah.
And we have a history with Measure E. For 4 years, we had a bond oversight committee made up of members of the community. And they were extremely vigorous, as Chris Petlock's predecessor will tell you. They were extremely careful, detailed. My husband has served for years on the oversight committee for the city, for the library and the roads, to make sure that the monies are being spent the way that the voters agreed to be taxed. So that's essentially what it is. We have a track record. I think that people will absolutely understand that we would expect to do exactly the same thing again this time. It's guardrails.
Thank you.
Yeah, not against guardrails, I think that's important. But sort of flowing to the more of a comment from that particular question then. So the list of projects that we have sort of spans everything from very vague and general to a little bit more specific. And I sort of wonder if this, because I know we had this conversation that we wanted to be on the more vague side, so we have a little bit of wiggle room. But I was a little caught off guard by a few of the specifics, and they're like, now are we promising something, you know, that a committee said, well, you wrote including pickleball. Are you doing that, as opposed to sort of saying we construct letting facilities for community recreation activities, or like there's a few very specific things in that list that then, I don't know, sort of feels like we're not committing to it.
Well, I'll just as a board member will tell you, my reaction was the same. It would be great to have a signature project as part of this to sort of tie it all in a nice neat bow for people. But we do, I think, owe it to ourselves and to the district to maintain the flexibility that's in here. There's even language that says that this isn't a priority list. This is a list of wishes and dreams that we would have for the money. We can't do anything outside of this list, but the discretion of the board and future boards in spending these funds, if the voters trust us with it, it has to be encompassed within this universe. And I don't think that we would want to handcuff either our board or future boards in ways that have more specificity.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying, is that, so I'm okay with something like renovate and modernize older parks, recreational facilities, including a 7-year-old community pool, i.e. a marquee project. I'm a little bit unclear why we needed to do construct and renovate facilities for community recreation activities, including pickleball. Not a marquee type of thing. And so I sort of wonder if we're being held responsible for this list through the committee, oversight committee, who's going to do an audit saying, are you doing everything on this list? The vagueness will help, I think, the board have some flexibility. The specificity, and if I'm reading this right, worries me that we promised something in the list now that it will be overseen by a community oversight board.
So your question is whether we should drop the specificity of the word pickleball? Or the specificity of the word aquatic facilities?
No, I'm okay with like a marquee project. I mean, I think there's no secret that that needs to be replaced. And we've advertised it and tested it and stuff. And so that to me is fine. Because a lot of funds will go to that. But the specificity, I think, of something like pickleball or even some of the other things, security fencing, very specific rather than, you know, just upgrading and providing enhanced security. It's a little bit more vague, and we can decide what that security measures are, but putting security fencing as a specific item in there, I wonder sort of locks us into, are we providing security fencing now? So I'm just asking out loud, that's all, in terms of why are some parts of this list very vague and broad, I think is fine, but some parts are very specific. Naming something that we should be spending money on, and then we're going to be accountable if we do win the bond to that thing that's named in that list.
So what would you suggest as an alternative?
More vague. I don't know. Do we need to say something like security fencing as a specific product versus just enhancing security?
I mean,
Or I don't know. I'm just
No,
go
okay.
ahead, yeah.
I,
Yeah.
I'm okay.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I'd like to ask Larry to chime in about the projects. I know a lot of this came directly from the public opinion poll, and what polled at over 2/3. I do know that I was the one that added pickleball because of the intense desire when I was at the senior, when we had the senior listening session and the seniors that I've talked to and all of that. So, you know, so I did add that personally, and I know Larry didn't have it in there, but I added that. So I wanted to make sure everyone knows that I added that, Larry. But do you want to talk about the list of projects?
Yeah, first off, I agree I think it's great that it's in there. I think the intent the intent is to provide facilities that the community wants. There's a balance of trying to be general so that there are a number of different things. You all are going to have to make some decisions at some point in time about how you're spending the money, when you're getting it, how you're going to spend it. Some projects may come in a little less. You may be able to get a match at some point to help you. Some projects will be a little bit more. So this isn't a budget for each and every individual project. It gives you a framework of all the things that you possibly could do. But it doesn't say, you know, we're going to build a brand new, I don't know, let's say gymnasium. Okay. But it gives you, the board and future boards, flexibility in determining how you want to spend the money. Now, I think, and so there is no way one could put on any list all the possible things that you could spend your money on, whether it be monkey bars or whether it be a hopscotch court or whatever. So it's a general description of things that you want to do. Now, there has been in your community, as in every community in Northern California, desire by a large portion of the senior community and others to do pickleball. And I think the plan is to figure that out once we get the money, where, how many, there'll be a great public process. This doesn't either tie your hands or commit you one way or another to do it. And it's how most bond measures are written, because this is going to be done over a long period of time. So I think your concerns that are articulated well, but I don't think that you need to really change or delete or add anything to it, because I think the resolution that the attorneys put together is very good.
And I think some of it, like make safety and security improvements, is, and including security fencing and lighting, is it's to show people, it's illustrative, like so people can understand, these are the types of things, like what does safety and security mean? Are you gonna hire security guards? Are you, and so, and we don't want to put in, all of the possibilities, but these are some of the things that we could do. I mean, just a reminder, Measure E had a list of projects like this, and while you got through some really big ones, there were some that were left off the list that we didn't get to because we ran out of the $29 million that were authorized, right? So Roger Smith Park restroom was on that list. We didn't get to that. There are lots of projects, even with 77 million, once we start doing plans, because other than the new park, which we had to create a plan, when we did the specific plan with the city and we took ownership of that property, the rest of them we're all going to go through a planning process, right? And so until we start getting estimates on what those things are and the board starts prioritizing what you do first, we're most likely, our 77 million is going to go faster than we think. And we might not get to everything on this list, like we didn't in Measure E, so. But I do feel that pickleball, since I've gotten quite a bit of questions from the senior community about what's in it for the seniors, that pickleball, including it in here as an illustrative example, is important. So that if people read this, understand this is going to go into the ballot information on like the second or third page. So it's, people have to read all of that to really, kind of get that. So.
Would it help Quade to say such things as add sport courts such as?
Yeah, I mean, just not here, I'm not against pickleball in any way.
It's a little pandering, it's a little pandering, that's.
And I picked up pickleball in the last year, so I actually enjoy it, but I enjoyed a lot of things as well too, and lots of other community members, like Bobby was saying too. We had a huge outpouring for bike park at one point as well too, right? And so why are we picking and choosing against, what one community is better than another? And this is what I brought up in the very beginning. My biggest concern about any of these types of bonds is the promises that are implicit in this for certain communities to vote for it, thereby excluding potentially other communities, saying, well, you promised that community pickleball. Why were you not thinking about our community? And that's just my worry, but I get the politics of this, like we're trying to court the 2/3 we need to pass this. I get that, but I think Larry sort of remembers the conversation I had. By doing so, are we sort of implicitly then just saying, your priority is not enough to get us the money we spent, and therefore our first set of money spending priorities is the ones that got us the bond. So we'll spend it on the pool, we'll spend on the new sports fields at the park. We got 5 million left over. Let's do the pickleball. And you just exclude everybody else, right? And so I just bringing it up as if we're going to think about this in a way that's equitable. And remember our definition of what inclusion and equity is, uplifting communities in which they don't have the power to do so. So we're giving voice to a voiceless community. And so in these around the table discussions, just want to be sure that we are aware of our implicit or almost promises in a way of when we write things in, even if it's on the 3rd page, we're kind of saying, we wanted your vote, you got us the bond, we got some money left over, you're gonna get it. And to exclude the people, that's just what I'm bringing up. Now, I'm not against the bond, I've already made public, I think this is an important thing for the community. I think in only way to advance the community is to invest in the community. So I think it's very important. But as we take these steps, I don't want to get too far ahead that we sort of roll over and forget our promises, or at least our desire to ensure that we're equitable every step of the way, and not at the very end and say, okay, maybe we should rethink about that. That's all I'm trying to say.
Thank you for your comments. You have any other? Wait, do you have any other comments? Okay. Okay. Katie, did you have a comment that you wanted to make?
No, I was just gonna point out that this list does say that this is not a guarantee that any
Right.
projects will be completed or that there's a priority.
Any other comments before?
No, I appreciate your concern and I share it. Having been through it, I share it, because those pressures will happen. We saw a little bit of it this evening.
Yeah.
But you know, it is what it is. You know, we have to, I don't think we can be frozen by the concern.
Yeah, and I am supportive of this. I'll kind of wrap this one up. I'm supportive. I appreciate Director Glover's comments and both Vice Chair Tran and Director Benato's comments. I get what you're saying about specificity. Pickleball, whether it's the seniors community certainly has voiced it, but it is not only a senior activity. And I think that's one of the things that we saw in the polling and also in the listening sessions, that yes, the seniors want pickleball, but there's a lot of other people that are not seniors that also do that. And if there are some things, and I was grateful to see the language in there that talked about this, there are all these things in here, but it doesn't mean that we're gonna be able to do any of them, and they're not in any specific order. We're not gonna, this is what we think we can do based on the listening sessions, based on the polling, based on other discussions. And as we go forward, if we approve this resolution, one of our duties, or the folks that are running the campaign, is going to be education of the public. And when they start asking questions, well, what do you mean? And, you know, so-and-so wants 12 or 13, a minimum of 13. It's that specificity that we're not gonna deal with right now. So I think and I went over this a couple of times. I was certainly a long-term resident and knew about what was going on in 2008 and 2009, and, you know, saw what happened with Measure A. So I think this is definitely a positive start. I think everybody's worked really hard to get to this point. And we are going to have to do explaining, and we're going to have to educate, and we're going to have to inform and let people know. And if we get information, well, what about, then we have to take a look at that what about stuff and see where that might fit as we go down the road. But this is not, at this point, for the resolution, I think since we've had an expert in bonds reviewing it, along with our own general counsel, we've had Larry reviewing it, and Michelle's been through these things. I know Director Benato, you've been through it umpteen times as Director Glover. So though the wording on some of it was a little, it's not something you'd want to submit as some kind of an essay in a class, but it meets the test of what we need to do for this particular resolution and the type of language that needs to be in here. So I'm supportive of it, and we are at the point, unless we have any other comments, I will entertain a motion to approve this resolution. Unless there are any other comments, and I will take other comments at this point also.
Bobby, you wanna jump in?
I'd be happy to make a motion that we adopt resolution 2024-07-25, ordering an election to authorize the issuance of general obligation bonds, establishing specifications of the election order, and requesting consolidation with other elections occurring on November 5th, 2024.
Thank you. We have a second.
I would be delighted to second it.
Okay, Director Bernardo seconds the motion. We'll take a roll call vote.
Okay, Director Bernardo,
Yes,
Director Glover,
Yes.
Secretary Worst. Secretary Worst. I don't hear him. Secretary, I'll come back to Secretary Worst. Vice Chair
I'm
Tran.
here. Sorry,
Okay.
I'm here.
Secretary Worst,
Yes.
Vice Chair Tran,
Yes.
and Chair Vincent.
Yes.
Great, excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you, Larry. Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, thank you all for
everybody.
being here. I know we're
Thank you
going to
all.
have
You're gonna send me
a
some.
lot
Yeah.
of further discussion coming up very soon.
Can I just remind you all that your public funds cannot be spent on advocacy?
Yes.
Okay, I know you're aware,
Yes.
and also
Thank you.
materials about that too, okay.
You're
Thank you very
aware.
I know you're aware.
And we have those reminded that as well, so thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah, so that's the end that's the end
Right.
of conversation at the board level, so that's
Okay.
did we wander over any lines?
not today.
No.
Good, thank you.
Osa would have jumped in if we would have, right, Osa?
Right, Osa?
Okay, we are now at item 6.2, update regarding the fence, and I'm gonna turn it over
Great,
to
yeah, thank you.
Michelle
Tom,
and
you wanna
Tom.
bring me up here? So, in January, 7 long months ago, almost, the board had directed staff, to go ahead and work with the neighbors, to try to coordinate, removal of the fence and placement of their own fences. In the staff report, we have identified each of the property owners and where they stand at this point in time. So we have 2 property owners who have their own fences already, and they don't, they're not objecting to us removing our fence. And then Kurt Knapp at 1984, who the board heard from at that meeting on July 11th or January 11th. He has built his fence and took back the property and then removed the district fence when he did that, which was fine with us. And then we have one last property, and that is at 1984 May Court. And that property owner does not want to put up his own fence at this point in time. He would like the district to transfer ownership to that fence as is to him in its current location. So it doesn't seem like he is interested in taking back the portion of property that we have identified that where that fence might be improperly placed. So staff is looking for direction from the board on how you'd like us to proceed. Staff is recommending, since Mr. Roning has 88 feet of fence, and if we remove our fence, he is not planning on putting up his own fence. So we would need to put some delineation on our property. We're recommending that the board consider allowing staff or consider surplusing that fence and allowing staff to work with Mr. Roning to take ownership of that fence. So with that, we'll take any questions. I have Osa here to talk through any legal issues, and Tom, who has talked with all of the property owners, so.
Tom, did you have any comments before I ask the directors?
No, he's covered.
Okay, great. Thank you, General Manager Lacy. I'm gonna start with my colleagues around the table. I'm gonna go Director Bernardo.
Thank you. Michelle, at one point we talked about getting an easement to allow our fence to stay on their property. So we've now moved to surplusing a fence, but that's going to leave a portion of their property outside the fence. Was there any concern about whether an easement is a better way to go rather than to surplus it and leave that strip of their property basically exposed to the park? And also maybe you've got some thoughts. This certainly seems easier.
I'm gonna punt that to Osa.
Yeah, I'm happy to try to answer that. my memory, and this is going back about a year ago now, is that we first sought permission to leave our fence on those properties, and that the property owners did not give permission. And so then we moved to whether to relocate the fence or remove the fence. And the board directed us to work to remove the fence. I don't think we ever got direction to try to purchase or acquire somehow an easement, but we didn't, I don't know that that would have been effective because the property owners did not indicate they were willing to give permission.
So it sort of morphed into them wanting ownership of the fence.
One property owner.
One property.
One
owner.
property owner. Yeah.
So from an efficiency perspective, that's what's being proposed. here.
Yeah, and to continue to provide a barrier in between
Yeah,
that,
absolutely.
that house and the, an effective barrier between that house,
Mhm.
and the park, so.
And I guess I
Understood.
might add also eliminate any responsibility for future maintenance of the fence.
Right. So will that be a recordable agreement or just a contract?
We had in mind a contract, and then Michelle and I had talked about maybe also putting something on the fence to say, you know, not district owned or something like that, so that it's clear this is a private fence, not a district owned fence.
Those are all the questions.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you.
Any other board questions? Vice Chair Tran?
Yeah, so I just want to make sure I understand how this is looking, say I haven't had a chance to walk it, but it's basically starting from 1985 Patricia, so it's their own fence, and we're taking the one right in front of it, and then the next one over 1984 Fay, their fence, we're just taking our fence in front of it. The next one over is they already built the new fence and took it already down, so they have a jog basically to their own property line. And then the last one is they want our fence. And so who is responsible then for the piece of land from the last property that he's not taking back his land, right? And so there's a little sliver on the other side of the fence that is that ours? Are we responsible for it? If we're not, but we have mulch on it, we have stuff on it, right?
Correct.
And so
So
how
the,
do we?
the fact that
delineate that?
the fence need not be on the property line for him to retain ownership of that land. So that land will be his still, even though even though the fence isn't on the property line.
So weeds, other stuff, if we just stop right at that little sliver, or?
Yeah, we'll probably throw some mulch on.
No, I'm just
I mean,
asking because
Would we be able to put in the agreement that the park district would still mulch and maintain the weeds up to the fence? Would that be,
I don't know, I'm just asking.
I'm asking OSA. if,
I don't know that you really want to take on maintenance responsibility for other people's property. I mean, I know that it might happen accidentally because we're not talking about a very big area. It's, I think, what is the maximum thick or width there? It's less than 4 feet, I think, right?
Yeah, that one's like
No.
less than 4 feet all the way down to.
I mean, if you look at the jog though, it's a
Yeah.
length of a fence.
It's about 4 feet,
Yeah.
yeah,
So,
yeah, it's that, yeah,
yeah, that width right here, right? The length.
yeah, that 4, yeah, it's about 4 feet,
About 4
Yep.
feet. And 88 feet long.
yes, and 88 feet long.
Which
Three-
goes into
320
a
square
point,
feet.
Yes.
which goes into a point.
Yeah.
Which goes into, so it decreases.
So trying.
Yeah.
No, I'm just,
No, it's,
because the property next to it they extended it out, right? So
Their
Yeah.
fence, yeah.
their fence.
They put their fence on the property.
Yeah.
And I would assume that maybe future owner, like, you know, if that property changes hands, a future owner may wanna move, but put their own fence in and put it on the property line, but.
and I asked this question, the property owner does not live in that property. So.
Yeah.
He's not
So nobody's gonna take care of that little. sliver
looking
there.
at the fence.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's just, I found that interesting.
We may do some incidental. There's not a lot over there, so, you know, but.
Any other,
So we're not gonna take, just
Go ahead.
so we're not gonna take responsibility for it, but if mulch just flows in that
Yeah.
area,
Mhm.
we're gonna let it be.
Yes.
Okay. Just wanna be clear.
Director Glover, or do you have any comments, questions?
Yeah, I've got a few questions. Thank you, Chair Vincent. My first question, I think, is more of a procedural question. It might be a Michelle and Osa question. I'm somewhat troubled by the fact that, and if you look at the verbiage in the staff report, which I think very accurately portrays the action taken by the board at the January 11th meeting, which was to remove the fence. To get an update 6 months later, and present options if, this is a quote, if one or more neighboring property owners does not elect to install their own fence. And the conversation around that, if you got into in depth, was about how to delineate between the park's property line and the neighbor's property line. We were never talking about leaving a fence, building a new fence. We were talking about how to simply delineate where the park property started or stopped and where the residence property started. So I understand, through Robert's Rules of Orders and other, things that, action can change and you can take another vote on something. But to me, I've never had this happen in my 13 years on the board where an action, in my opinion, was taken to take down the fence. And now we are coming back here with an action to leave the fence. So I do question that a little bit. I don't know if maybe it's a simple answer, maybe it's grayer than I think, but maybe that's my first question.
Michelle, do you want me to?
Yeah, you want to? Yeah.
So I think how we got to this point is that we had not back in January considered the possibility that the property owner would want our fence, right? We'd considered two possibilities. One was we take it out, and the other one was we move it. The board very clearly said, take it out. And then we envisioned a problem might result, which is we might have no fence between us and the neighbors. And then staff was directed, well, if that happens, come back, because we'll have to address, what to do. Should it be delineated in some way or not at all? Well, when this property owner said that he wanted to keep the fence, it presented a new possibility that we hadn't considered. And so we thought that rather than take what is basically an irreversible action to remove the fence, that we would bring it back to the board and let you know, hey, there's this new possibility that hadn't occurred to us. Do you want us to take a different action? In other words, let the guy keep the fence, or do you want us to stick with the prior board direction, which is take it out?
I appreciate the answer. It's still just my own editorial. It troubles me in that, we take action here, on a regular basis, and that, we could take action and something could change, a month, 2 months after the fact, and then we could come back. We don't always get that opportunity to come forward with new information and change the vote after the fact. So my understanding that I didn't anticipate that we were going to be having a question like we're having tonight to take a new action and potentially, based on staff's recommendation, reversing an action of this board. So I'll leave that as my editorial, and I'll move on to my next question. The next question has to do with the fence itself. It currently has coverings on it, and I know that there had been a discussion at the previous meeting that if a fence was put, if the decision at the board, before the board chose to take the fence down, there was conversation about should the board choose to put another chain link fence, which was the original proposal, out beyond beyond the homeowner's property line or at the property line. Would we be able to regulate what was placed on there? And so I believe the answer at that time was that we could request that nothing be placed on that that would make it look dilapidated or blighted. Would that still be the case with this, since the fence, as proposed, the fence would be on the homeowner's property line? Would we be able to dictate that?
The fence would be owned by the property owner, so I don't think we would have any standing in dictating that. Also, do you have a different opinion on that?
Well, I mean, I suppose you could direct us to try to negotiate that with the neighbor as a quid pro quo for him getting to keep the fence. Enforcing that might be tricky long-term, because it's a contract. It's not then our fence, right? So if it's our fence on our property, we can take things off of the fence. If it's his fence on his property, he might have a contractual obligation, but we would be stuck with and try to enforce a contract against him. So if you want a fence with the absolute ability to control what's hanging on it, I think you should make it on district property.
Thank you. I have one more question, Chair Vincent, if that's okay. I'm also, I know a extensive amount of outreach went out to the neighbors in advance of our January 11th meeting. And I anticipate an extensive amount of outreach went after this meeting. I'm just curious how this was conveyed to us by the current responding homeowner, and if possible, when that was conveyed.
Tom had a conversation with Mr. Roy.
Yeah, I had actually went to each house because we send a letter to each home. I went when I had not heard anything from any of them. I went door to door. And when I went to that home, I brought the letter with a copy of the letter with me. I asked them if they had received it. They had their tenants there. They did not give it to their landlord. And so at that point, they got it to the landlord, who is Mr. Rohig. And that's why I guess he responded when he did.
So he responded recently, and Tom had conversations with him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you want to tell the board what your conversation was?
Yeah, he said he would be very upset if the fence was removed, that he would like to keep the fence and take control of the fence. And he also was upset that nobody had looked up who owned the house and sent it to him directly at his home in Walnut Creek, but
Was that true?
Yeah, we weren't aware that he wasn't living in the house, so we hadn't heard anything from anybody, and Tom went door to door, so, yeah. And we sent it directly to the homeowners, or to the residents.
right.
But he was aware of this meeting. Tom let him know that this meeting, the board was gonna have this conversation, and that, that staff would bring this option to the board, since that is his request. And so he was aware. I don't know why he didn't come to the meeting, but he was aware of this meeting.
I do have one other question, if I could, real quick. My understanding on the eastern side of that fence, the fence that goes closest to Cleveland, it's my understanding, visually looking at that, there is a gap there that is used by residents of that home to kind of access in and out of the park at this time. Is that correct?
There was a door cut in that wall many years ago, but it has been sealed. I've never seen it opened in many years.
Is there a gap in between the chain link fence and the sound wall?
No.
Okay, that's all my question. Thank you, Chair Vincent.
Thank you for
Can
your
I ask a
comment.
follow-up question?
Sure, go ahead.
What was the original thing we asked of the neighbors?
So the original, you mean the original motion by the board, or no?
No, when we first.
Originally, when we found this out, we sent a letter to them, asking for, letting them know that, we believe that the fence was put in erroneously, and is on their property. And we asked them to contact us for permission to leave the fence where it's at. And so
permission to leave the fence where it's at.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Isn't that sort of what he's asking us to do?
He is now, yes. And I do believe that he might not have received the original letter, since it went to the home itself. So I believe that is probably, but yeah, that is what he's asking us to do at this point.
Okay. So that sort of morphed into turning it into surplus and giving him ownership of it, as opposed to what the original ask was.
Yes.
So how are we gonna handle that original issue? If the owners of the property had said, yeah, you will just leave the fence where it is.
Boy, this is a while ago now. I'm not sure it would have even come to the board at that point because the fence would have just stayed where it was and we would have put a note in the file with some documentation that the neighbors had approved, had given their consent. I think that it came up because a portion of the fence was leaning, right? And so we needed permission to go over there and fix the leaning portion, yeah.
Right, but that part's not in
That's no
play.
longer at issue, yeah.
And we went to each of the neighbors,
Mhm.
even the ones
Yeah.
where the fence was fine.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
asked this question.
Yes. Mhm.
Well, we didn't go to the neighbor on Patricia because at that location, the fence is in the correct location.
Okay, but there were 4 that we went to,
The other,
and only one of them.
We went to 3 originally. Yeah, because Patricia, the Patricia fence is in the right location. And so we went to the other 3 to ask permission to leave the fence where it's at.
Okay. So we weren't gonna get it, okay, all right, you answered my question.
Bob has his hand raised.
Oh, thank you. Go ahead. Go ahead, Bob.
Thank you. I forgot one question I had. The other question had to do, and I think this might have been where we were headed, or we're seeing it. Maybe I couldn't hear exactly, but if the homeowner keeps their fence, or if this fence remains, we still have a portion, and I forget how many feet or whatever. There's still going to be a portion of the property that is the homeowner's property and not district property. Is there a liability issue with that? Because I know that our whole conversation was bringing the fence back to our property line. And then also in the event that there wasn't a fence, was to then create some delineation of you are now leaving district property. So would we still be required to put something that delineated?
I wouldn't say that you would be required as a blanket matter. It would depend on whether there were risks that you wanted to warn the public about. And looking at the photographs, I think we're talking about, right now at least, it's 4 feet by not fully 80, but some lesser portion of mulch. So that wasn't really something we thought of as particularly risky, but we envisioned, well, what if there was a pool, which is luckily not the case, or a dog or something dangerous on the neighbor's property. So I'm not sure that you would need a delineation or a warning if the condition remains just like it is, but we'd have to keep an eye on it, right? If something dangerous arose, yes, that would be an issue.
But if the direction of the board was to go back to their original direction, which was to remove the fence altogether, then we would need to, because the homeowner has made it clear he is not planning on putting up a fence. So we would need to, because it would now be open into that private property, so.
Yeah. So that was the question we discussed but didn't resolve at the last meeting because there were a number of options available and a number of opinions about how best to proceed. And so I think the board basically asked us to come back in 6 months to discuss that issue if it turned out to be needed.
Yeah.
But the board did make its decision, and we had this discussion on the understanding that none of the 3 homeowners was willing to just have the fence stay where it was.
Right, correct.
And that has changed.
Yes, one of them is now interested in keeping the fence where it's at.
Because the others have their own fence and the newer fence that you can see. My question has to do with in 5 years, and OSA's, like you said, you have to keep an eye on this. So 3 to 5 years, the owner sells the property and somebody new buys it. But if they want that extra 4 feet, they're gonna remove that. If this was approved, they would remove that chain link fence and fanned out to where the southern one shows, 4 feet or so out. But this is the one that's got the covers on it?
Yes.
Yes.
And those trees in the picture are not very close. It's hard to tell the depth.
I'm sorry?
There's a
These
couple
little
of,
trees?
yeah, there's a couple little trees down there.
Yeah, there are a couple little trees, but they're on our property,
Yeah.
so,
But they're not close to that
no,
property line.
they're not.
We just got a funky fence line, because it kind of does this straight and then another little jog and then a new fence and then
Yeah.
another jog, right?
Yeah, if you look, yeah, you kind of look at, I
Yeah.
mean, it technically goes straight across the red dotted line.
Yeah. That's how it's
But
supposed
yeah,
to
but the
look, right?
fence, yeah, that's how it's where it's supposed to be, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
so we have a couple of jogs.
yes.
It's just, it makes it funky looking.
And, yeah,
Director Worst, did you have any comments, questions?
Yeah, my only comment was the removal of the existing fence that's behind the other homeowners. I just want to make sure that that's done with care as to not damage their fence. So I'm not entirely sure of the process, but I just want to make sure that when the fence is removed, that there's no damage. I'd encourage documentation before and after the fence is removed.
Thank you. Any other questions?
Excuse me. So what would be the parliamentary way of changing our earlier decision? To Bobby's point, can we? Or are we on a path here and we should really only be considering that path?
I'm not sure that staff's recommendation is that you change your prior decision, right?
No.
I mean, you could certainly view it that way, but I was thinking of it more as in the effort to implement your decision, which was remove the fence, no longer have a fence that's district owned, operated, maintained. We've received a request from the neighbor that they would like to keep it rather than us throwing it away. They would like to keep it. And the question is, do you want us to entertain that, or would you like us to continue to implement the direction you already provided, which is take the fence out?
and I would like to also point out that the motion specifically said, come back and present options if one or more neighboring property owners does not elect to install their own fence. So while the direction was to, the direction was to remove it, but to work with the property owners, and if one of them doesn't want to install a new fence, to come back to the board and present options.
Because one of the neighbors could have said, okay, go ahead, remove it.
Yeah.
And I'm not gonna build that nice new fence. Okay.
And I think that could still, as that's actually what is in Mr. Roerig's mind at this point, right? If we don't agree to give him the fence, if we just want to stick with taking it out, then I understand from talking to staff that he's not planning to put in his own fence. So then we should talk about what would the district do? Would you like us to, put some other sort of delineation, signs, what's the board's pleasure in terms of a delineation or not?
Any other questions? I'm gonna open it up for public comment.
We
have no public comment, so I will close public comment and bring it back to the board for further comments
and discussion.
Thank you. Anything from Cyberland up there? Good.
Not for me.
I mean, I'll go ahead. I obviously think the action before us tonight troubles me for the reasons I explained. I do understand the rationale behind the reasons why we are proceeding, and I respect that decision. I'm troubled by the fact that there continues to be an emphasis placed on, well, the homeowner said they're not going to do this. Well, I mean, if, my neighbor, tore down his fence or whatever, I just think that if there wasn't a fence there would be a fence up there relatively soon. So I don't believe that the homeowner, I believe that that's what they're saying because they want a free fence. I am extremely troubled by the fact that this property, from the fence component of it, we have watched the fence go down back there. We have watched it be blighted with hangings on the fence, which leads me to believe there is obviously a desire by the tenants of that property to have some privacy, which would mean to me that if that was taken away, that they would request of the property owner to put up a fence. I stand by, and until we can put in place protections, which it sounds like we can ask and we can put something in, but enforcing it is nearly impossible. And I think the statement from council was that if we really cared about what it looked like from our side of the fence, then we should probably put it on our property. And that's where I lean to. I think that we have a property owner who, has shown that they don't care what it looks like. I'm not comfortable in moving forward because I think that it's going to continue to deteriorate. I think we're going to continue to have issues there. And, along those lines, I also want to compliment Mr. Knapp, who actually showed up at this meeting and had concerns and indicated that he wanted to put up a fence, and he put up a fence on his property, which I estimate the other property will do as well. But for those reasons, and I think the inability to secure any type of certainty that this will not become a blighted fence with anything hanging on it, I can't proceed with supporting the staff recommendation. Rather, I would go back to the original action and request that the fence be taken down. Thank you.
Any other comments?
Can I ask a question of
Sure.
Bobby? Bobby, why are you concerned about this fence possibly becoming blighted, but not Mr. Knapp's fence becoming blighted or any other fence along there becoming blighted?
I was absolutely concerned about Mr. Knapp's. I think I made that comment at that time about, what it looked like on his property currently and what the fence situation was. And if that fence was to be left. And, at that time, Mr. Knapp reassured me and us that he was planning on putting up a fence, and he did. This fence in this location has looked dilapidated for years. And so, now we've got fences along the way so for instance, if you go all the way down, if you go to the senior center on Patricia and you start working your way down, if those neighbors decided to hang stuff on our side of the fence, we could take that down. Right now, if their fences block what we see through there, if they put it on their side, we can't see it. This is a chain link fence. Who's to say that, the owners of this property could put a political sign up there facing out to the park? We can't take that down. What if they put, other things on there that, we have no control of what they put up on their property to block the fence. But if they do take it down and which I believe they will ultimately put up a fence, or we delineate, there will be no fear of there being a blighted structure that remains there.
May I ask a question,
Yeah.
staff? Is there a fence behind that chain link fence?
There is not.
There's
No,
not.
there is not. There is no fence. It was similar to Mr. Knapp's. There was no fence behind those two properties, and those two properties are the ones we had issues with. Mr. Knapp had dug under the fence, which eroded
Right,
the
right,
fence.
right, right.
And then they both had
Yeah.
sails on them, and Mr. Knapp took them down when district staff asked.
So the yellow
So-
line with the X's is, the legend says that's the existing fence line.
Yes,
At the
that
time.
was at the time, yes, at the original time, Mr. Knapp, Fay Court, the 1985, he has now removed that yellow line and put his fence on the red line.
Right, but the one to the east of him
Correct.
is what we're talking
Is where the
about.
fence is,
right?
uh-huh.
1984 May.
Yeah.
One on the right.
But that fence is not there any longer.
No, that, our chain link fence that's on that,
Yeah,
that's on that yellow line is there. There is no,
oh, that's existing, our existing
existing
fence.
Yes.
Oh, shit.
that's our existing fence, and so, so
So
it,
we didn't show the neighbor's fences.
and there is, we were trying to delineate where our fence was in relation to the property line. If the board does want us to move forward and remove the fence, we would most likely recommend, like we did before, putting a delineation from Mr. Knapp's fence down in, some kind of lower fence, not a huge one, but some kind of fence to keep people out of that area.
Okay.
If I might add, also, I think the original discussion had included a proposal to repurpose the existing fence and relocate it onto the property line. And there was a cost associated with that. So, there's a possibility that, we remove the fence aligned with the prior decision and then erect a new fence on the property line. But that would be at a cost to the district.
Yeah, I think, as I recall, that was unacceptable.
Yeah, I think in our January meeting, the direction was no fence.
Yeah, or delineation,
Or
a small,
delineation.
a low fence.
Right, or low fence.
Okay.
Okay, did you have anything else, Derek?
No.
Go ahead.
Yeah, maybe it's just my engineering sense or just architectural sense, it just looks bad, all these jogs in there, I think it's just be a line. I was actually gonna suggest, just even with the fence, our fence, if the board moves forward, just giving it to the property owner, just still delineating it, even if it's 4 feet. Because we wanna be sure that people know that that is not our component, but after hearing Bobby talk about it a little bit more, I think I'm also leaning also in favor of going back to our original action, just taking that fence and, that is our responsibility. We'll just take it out. We'll delineate our property line with something. And then the whole property owner can do what they want to do in terms of a fence or not fence. I mean, we can't control that. We're not supposed, or we shouldn't respond necessarily to threats or no threats. I think we just need to do we felt is right, and we get the property owners adequate notice, which we have. So I think I'm leaning not to this and with something else, going back to what we originally had, just take it out and stick a property delineation and let it be.
I'm gonna ask Tom a question. How were the discussions with the actual owner?
I mean, at first he was, upset that we didn't let him know, and I'm like, well, I don't know that you live in Walnut Creek, I just gave a letter to the home where the fence is. After we had our discussion, he asked to keep the fence, and I said, well, we're supposed to remove the fence, I will have to, bring that back here and find out what you guys wanna do, but he was just super adamant that he does not wanna lose the fence.
Well, yeah, I know Bob's assessment and from what we're hearing, it is unfortunate that he didn't know about it, but that's also his tenant could give the mail to the landlord. But it is, he's looking in, I'm not gonna, it's a free fence for him. But it also causes us a lot more concern because it is his property up to the fence. And even though you have this agreement that he will maintain the fence, we'd have to be looking at this often. And if he sells, that could be a good thing. But then you get into, well, what's the real, then you get, you know, the deeded property actually goes here, but the fence is here. I am also leaning towards, we're sorry you didn't get the information, and our direction back in January was to remove the entire fence, and, you know, we may do that.
He also did not show up to this meeting to
Right.
be heard either, so.
Right.
You know,
Okay. Go ahead, Director Guevara.
I'm troubled that we offered to leave the fences. And then we, based on incorrect or insufficient information, pulled back that offer. I'm troubled by that. I'm troubled by the fact that we didn't, it's very easy steps to, you know, pull title on property and figure out who we really should be working with. It's not hard. That we should have, you know, we should have not expected that the tenant had some responsibility to notify the owner and yada, yada, yada. I'm troubled by the fact that we've got some existing fences. I'm looking at 1984 May Court, Mr. Chuck Rohrig.
That's
That's
we're
what we're
talking
talking
about.
about.
Okay. Why does this picture look backwards?
Which one?
This one here. So this is the fence
Okay, that's the new fence that Mr.
Yeah.
Knapp
Knapp
put in, but Mr. Rohrig lives on this side.
Go 2 photos down.
he lives right here. This is the road.
This, okay, so this is not Rohrig here.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
That's the right-hand side of the fence.
Yeah, road, this is, over here is, I forget his name, Garrett.
Stone.
That's Garrett Stone's property.
Okay, so my point is that there's a portion of of that gentleman's property that's in the same situation as what we would have on the other side. And we're not making any noise about this. Am I making myself clear here?
Oh, you mean, so his fence is a little bit, yeah, his fence is jogged back off of the property line,
Right, so,
but that's his own personal fence, so.
correct.
And, you know, we're gonna remove, I mean, he could take, once we remove the fence, he could take that back.
Okay,
we
but
haven't
still,
removed the fence yet.
the principle is, there is area behind a fence that looks like it's part of the park. Okay, which is the issue to some extent on the other side.
Could I interrupt to ask Michelle a question? Michelle and Tom, both, my memory is that when we sought permission from these property owners to keep the fence at its current location, it was with the idea that they would, if they all agreed, then it would stay.
Yes.
Not that it wasn't like an individual offer to each of them or a question. It was, do we have the option? Do you all three agree? And we didn't get a permission. We certainly didn't from Mr. Knapp. So that was kind of the end of that possibility, because the chain link fence, it's sort of one long thing structurally. So it's hard to remove just pieces.
Okay, thank you. That helps too. That helps too. Well, I'm persuaded that we should remove this fence. But I think we should give the true owner of the property some significant notice, 3 months, 4 months, to be able to get his property in order, rather than just, you know, show up on Saturday and take the fence down. But then we do need to, and I'm with you, Bobby, I think that, a fence will go up there. You know, he's got tenants, he's got responsibilities, a fence will go up there. And, meanwhile, I think there, you know, that what we're talking about is some simple delineation. So that because there's no fence into the back of that yard, that we need to warn people that they can't go beyond some distance. And I like the point that you made too, that that's probably the best way to get a consistent line of fence back there as well, which, I think we have an interest in some aesthetic standards back there. He doesn't have to, but still, I think the practical issue there is exactly that will be the result. So, that's my take.
So procedurally on this, Michelle,
Well, it sounds like, at least I have a consensus, Derek, I haven't heard from Derek that.
I'm concerned, you know, that we're creating a risk that isn't already there with removal of the fence. You know, as it exists currently and the homeowner wants to keep it in place, you know, by removing it, we're exposing his property to the district. And if he elects not to, you know, put up a fence of his own, we've created a risk that wasn't there to begin with.
That hasn't changed, Director Worst, from the original direction from the board. The original direction from the board was to remove the fence, and to offer the homeowners ample time to put up their own fence. But if they did not, or if there were other options to come back, but if they did not, then the district would put a delineation up that this is the end of the park. And so there, you know, that's private property. We will put a delineation up that will make clear where the boundary of the park ends. And I don't foresee us having any additional liability because of that.
That's just my concern.
Osa, is there anything procedurally we need if we just stick with the original?
Right, so I think that's exactly the direction that I'm hearing from the board, is that there will be no change to the direction that we got back in January. The only thing is the 6 months have now passed. We have given the report back to you of status. So I guess my question is, would the board like to hear back again, or would you like staff to just go ahead and implement the direction that we've received tonight?
I think what I've been hearing is that we want to implement removal of the fence, but to Director Bonato's point, that now that we have a dialogue or had a recent dialogue with the actual owner of the property who wants the chain link fence to remain, that give that person some months to, before we take the fence down.
Correct. We will report back to him that the board said no to his request to keep the fence. We're going to remove the fence, but if he needs some time to get his own fence up, that we will be flexible and give him that time.
All right. We need to memorialize.
I don't believe so.
Okay.
Actually, don't make a
Okay.
motion on this particular.
Right, no,
No, I think since we're
Existing
sticking,
motion.
Right.
stands.
Yeah.
right. Yeah, okay,
so I think we're fine.
Can I ask one more?
you may.
Just more, just throwing it out on the table, if we take down the fence, could there be surplusing, say, at some sort of compromise, we're not gonna let the fence stay there, we're gonna take it down. You can have the fence, you just stick it where you wanna put it on the new property line or whatever.
No, we're
Or
gonna,
is that, or is this, we're just gonna take it out and toss it? Just throwing it, okay.
yeah,
Osa's nodding. Osa, you have a strong view in that?
Well, I think my feeling is, and Tom, please correct me, that most of the value of this fence is in the labor required to install it, right? That the actual mesh, the chain link mesh and the poles, those are not, those are scrap metal. So
I mean, they would be to us. It's really difficult to reuse that fencing. And the other problem I would have with it. If they just moved the fence out to their property line, they would still hang, you know, tarps up on it for their privacy, and then we just still have the exact same problem with the blighted look. So I would not wanna give them the fence, the materials to do what they want with it. I would rather take it away, and hopefully they would build a fence that's not see-through.
Yes, but I think it's important for us all to acknowledge that we don't have a say in what kind of fence they put in.
Right.
So if we're worried about see-throughism,
We could put up
That's the way
another
it is.
see-through.
It's like bright orange
Correct.
plastic mesh. Yeah.
Fair
Okay,
enough. Okay.
all right, thank you for the good discussion. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Elsa.
Thank you.
Thanks, Elsa.
Good night.
good night.
All right, we will now move on to item 7. I don't believe we have any.
No, we don't have anything. Now that I'm back to work full-time, I'll be August and September, we'll be planning some meetings, so now that I don't have to be out every other week, so.
Alrighty. We'll move on to board announcements and requests to staff, and we will start with Director Bernardo.
Oh, okay, thank you. First of all, thank you, Michelle, for the bocce rules. I haven't forgotten, but I haven't edited or taken my pencil to them yet, so I will do that soon. I know that there are others who will be speaking about Blues and Brews, so I'll just keep my comments short. I took my daughter and 2 grandsons on Saturday, and the Kids Zone was up, and it was awesome. I don't know who the Kids Zone people are, if they're hired to do this kind of thing, or.
It's our Kids Stop staff and our
Is
preschool
it,
staff.
was it really?
Yep.
Staff? Okay,
Mhm.
awesome. Wonderful. They were so patient, they were so happy, and had just so much fun with everybody. It was it was really impressive. The food trucks were great. We had an opportunity to visit a couple of them. And so I didn't get into the beer tent or any of that kind of stuff, but people seemed very happy, and there was certainly a lot of crowds out in the free part of the event. Looked like they were having a great old time. It was still hot, but in any event, just in closing, I wanted to give a shout out to Liz, because I think her after action steps were just tremendous. I haven't seen that kind of thing very, very often. And not only did she write it up beautifully, but she also was gracious and made sure that both the sponsors as well as staff were thanked, and in a very public way too on Facebook. And anyway, just kudos to her for that handling. That was really, really marvelous.
Thank you. Director Glover.
Yeah, I echo those comments by Board Member Bernardo. I mean, this event has a long history, as we've talked about, and an excellent one. It's been an awesome event that brings people out to the park and showcases what we have to offer the community. And this year was exceptional. I would echo Board Member Bernardo's comments towards Liz and Jen Thoitz and the entire team. It's the work that went into that was amazing, and the results showed. The social media and the marketing that has gone out this year for this event was, we've always had a great event and great attendance, but this one was just even above and beyond. And I think it was in large part due to the amount of attention and detail that Liz and the team put into this. And just kudos and thanks. That was a pleasure to be out there and to see so many people enjoying the park. So thank you.
Secretary Wurst.
Yeah, I'm bummed I missed the Blues and Brews. It sounded like it was a really good event. I guess the next thing I'm looking forward to is, Community Service Day is coming up. I know that, the district does quite a bit for that, including this year's the 20th anniversary for Community Service Day. So I understand that there will be a party beforehand on Friday. So just looking forward to that, and no other comments.
Okay, thank you. Enjoy the rest of your vacation.
Yeah, thank you.
Vice Chair Tran.
Thank you. sorry, I missed the Blues and Brews. For some reason, swim team just wipes you out. And so Saturday was, I was glad that my daughter won her heat and was able to pop her time. I guess I'm now part of the lingo. And
Yeah, you
now
go.
I know
You
what that
got it.
means. Yeah, right. But both my wife and I were volunteering and we're like, oh, we should go to Blues and Brews. And we're like, in a minute, and just fell asleep. So we just, we were just so tired. But kudos, I guess, to the swim coaches and the teams and everything. I guess we're in the season now, so it's just fun stuff and parties, and so it's been great. But I have nothing else to report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Blues and Brews was awesome. It was, I think, the best one we've had yet, and I was there Friday night, Saturday. Liz and Jen and all of the staff were just working the way they usually do, and they just had it, click, 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 click. Everything was working, the Wi-Fi and the computers for the ticketing. When I was at the info booth Saturday afternoon, it was just no glitches. We had no problems and everything went really well. So I know the sponsors were there, and we had a brand new sponsor, BMW, that
Those cars were gorgeous.
yeah, they were. And Liz was responsible for that. And I know Michelle and I made a point of talking to the BMW people and thanking them for being there, and hopefully they'll be back again. I also wanted to thank Paul and Sheila Catruvo for handling the music part and coordinating all of that. The music was phenomenal. Friday night, it was really nice with Salvage Title, and in the band, they said, it's Salvage, not Savage. And I said, yes, I do know that before I announced them. But I guess they get Savage Title quite a bit. But even though it was warm on Friday night, it was a good crowd. It wasn't as big as it has been, but Saturday just knocked it out of the park. The kids, you could see, the bubbles going up into the air and everything. Kids were coming in and heading straight that way. So I think there was a little bit of something for everyone that wanted to come down to the park. The temperature cooled off certainly more, and we had a little bit of a breeze on Saturday. But the music was phenomenal. It just was a great event. And again, we can't thank the staff and Jen and Liz in particular. Saw Tom out there, Lance was out there, everybody was out there. They were all working. I mean, there was no idle hands putting that event together. So thank you all. The next event coming up, unless you're allergic to seafood, is the main event, which is August 17th. And I expect you'll start to see a lot of social media blasts coming out on that. And that's an outside event over by the senior center. And I'll, once you start seeing all the Facebook postings and other social media information, you can see all the fun things that they've got planned for that. Plus, there's a movie night coming up on August 10th.
The weekend before.
Right, so I know they were taking votes on which movie to show, so I don't know what the final one is, I haven't heard yet, but that's always a fun event. That's all that I have. And let's see, what time is it? It is 8:52, so our next meeting is August 8th here, and I will adjourn this meeting at 8:52.
Thank you. Thank you, Bobby and Derek.
Thank you, Bobby.
Appreciate you
Derek,
being here.
Yeah.
Yeah, momentous
Bye-bye.
meeting.
Thank you all.